This is the chapter 7, How Animals Survive, lesson 7.1, and metabolism, and under that is different metabolic processes.
Metabolism is from the Greek word metabo, which means change. It is a set of life-sustaining chemical transformations within the cells of living organisms. So there are three main purposes of metabolism. They are the conversion of food or fuel to energy to run cellular processes, then the conversion of food or fuel to building blocks for proteins, lipids, nucleic acids, and some carbohydrates, and the elimination of nitrogenous wastes. So these enzymes catalyze reactions allow organisms to grow and reproduce, maintain their structures, respond to their environments. The word metabolism can also refer to the sum of all chemical reactions that occur in living organisms, including digestion and the transport of substances into and between different cells. So, in this case, the set of reactions within the cell is called intermediary metabolisms. So, metabolism is usually divided into two categories. First, catabolism. So when we say catabolism, it is the breaking down of organic matter by the way of cellular respiration, and the second is anabolism, which means the building up of components of cells such as proteins and nucleic acid. So what does nucleic acids mean? So I guess you know what nucleic acids means. If not, then nucleic acids are naturally occurring chemical compounds that serve as the primary information carrying the molecules in cells, which means they play an important role in directing protein synthesis. Usually, breaking down releases energy, and building up consumes energy. The chemical reactions of metabolism are organized into metabolic pathways, in which one chemical is transformed through a series of steps into another chemical by a sequence of enzymes. You know that enzymes are crucial to metabolism because they allow organisms to drive desirable reactions that require energy that will not occur by themselves by coupling them to spontaneous reactions that release energy. Enzymes act as catalysts. When we say catalyst, it is a substance that causes a chemical reaction to happen more quickly, that allow the reactions to proceed more rapidly. Moving on with the metabolic processes. Metabolic processes are a sequence of biochemical reactions that takes place within living cells to maintain life. So they are divided into two main types. First, the catabolic process that involves the breakdown of complex molecules from food into smaller units that can be used as building blocks for new molecules or to provide energy. Second is the anabolic process that involves the use of energy to build new chemicals that become components of cells. So these reactions are made possibly by a number of organic catalysts known as enzymes. Together, the two types of metabolic processes allow the transformation of raw materials or nutrients that are taken in by an organism into tissue. One compound, common to all cellular life, is essential to these transformations. Adenosine triphosphate is used to store energy obtained from nutrients such as carbohydrates and to release energy when it is required for the building of new molecules.
So, in catabolic processes, some organisms, such as green plants, make their own food from inorganic materials, while others, such as animals, consume organic materials to claim their nutrition. So the food consumed by animals can be broken down into three main types. They are the carbohydrates, lipids, which is fats and oils, and proteins. So digestion involves catabolic processes that break these down into simpler components. So for example, relatively complex carbohydrates such as polysaccharides and disaccharides are broken down into glucose, and proteins are broken down into amino acids. These simpler compounds may be used by anabolic processes to build new materials, or they may be further broken down to provide energy. Cellular respiration is the process by which the carbohydrate glucose is broken down into carbon dioxide and water, producing energy that is stored in ATP. The procedure involves oxidation rather, and where there is atmospheric oxygen available, it is used in what is known as aerobic respiration. So this is the process that takes place in animals, plants, and some microorganisms. So in conditions where no free oxygen is present, anaerobic respiration takes place. This is found only in certain microorganisms that live in soil, decaying organic matter, under the sea, deep underground, and in the intestines of animals. These organisms use alternatives such as nitrates, sulfates, fumarate, and even sulfur in place of free oxygen. Anaerobic respiration is much less efficient than the aerobic process and produces much less ATP. So in animals, lipids are also oxidized to carbon dioxide and water, but the first few steps are different. The chemistry of organism takes place in water-based environment, but fats and oils do not mix with water. So the first step is to emulsify these substances, which means converting them into a form that will mix with water. In the same way that detergents can help clean up oil spills. This is done by soap-like substances contained in bile released by gallbladder into the small intestine. The lipids are then broken down into fatty acids and glycerol, which can be absorbed through the intestines and which can then undergo oxidation reactions similar to those performed on carbohydrates. Proteins are very large, complex molecules made up of building blocks known as amino acids. They are metabolized by various reactions that split them up into their amino acids, which can be absorbed and then used within cells. Generally, proteins are not used to provide energy, but instead, the amino acids are utilized to manufacture new proteins to build tissue and muscle. In cases where no carbohydrate or fat is available in the diet and the body has used up its fat reserves, proteins may be used to generate energy by oxidation of their amino acids. In these cases, the body may start breaking down muscle proteins. So, in anabolic processes, also known as biosynthesis, these are the reactions that use up the energy stored in ATP. By catabolic processes, they include the building of proteins from amino acids and the construction of DNA from nucleotides. In animals, the muscle contractions that power movement can also be included, as these require the muscle of stored energy. In plants, the synthesis of glucose from carbon dioxide and water through photosynthesis is another anabolic pathway. So how do animal cells get food? So food to an animal cell is glucose. So glucose is a monosaccharide, a simple sugar produced by plants in the process known as photosynthesis. So glucose is used to produce the energy to make another molecule called ATP, or the adenosine triphosphate, which is the energy currency of the cell. So this process is called cellular respiration, and this process takes place in the mitochondria of the cell. So all cells, regardless of what living thing they are in, require glucose to make ATP in sufficient quantities to run their metabolism. So animals get this glucose by eating plants or animals that eat plants. The glucose that the cells do not use is stored in the tissue of the plants. So when we eat plants or animals, the glucose is often stored in larger molecules called polysaccharide starches. During the process of digestion, these molecules are broken down to glucose. So other molecules made from these simple sugars include the disaccharides or double sugars, including the table sugar, sucrose, so on and so forth. So once these molecules are broken down, the glucose enters the cell via diffusion. So once the cell has the glucose, it is transported to the mitochondria where it is then processed to form the ATP. So how cells obtain energy from food? So cells require a constant supply of energy to generate and maintain the biological order that keeps them alive. This energy is derived from the chemical bond energy in food molecules, which thereby serve as fuel for cells. Sugars are particularly important fuel molecules, and they are oxidized in small steps to carbon dioxide and water. In this section, we trace the major steps in the breakdown or catabolism of sugars and show how they produce ATP, NADH, and other activated carrier molecules in animal cells. So we concentrate on glucose breakdown since it dominates energy production in most animal cells. A very similar pathway also operates in plants, fungi, and many bacteria. Other molecules such as fatty acids and proteins can also serve as energy sources when they are funneled through appropriate enzymatic pathways. So that is all. Thank you for listening, and let us now move on with the lesson 7.2.
And now, we are going to discuss Lesson 7.2 Gas Exchange with the Environment. The objectives of these lessons are to give the importance of gas exchange and to describe how some animals exchange respiratory gases. So, what is gas exchange? Gas exchange is the process by which oxygen and carbon dioxide move in opposite directions across organisms' respiratory membranes, between the air or water of the external environment and the body fluids of the internal environment. To make it short, gas exchange is about exchanging gases like exchanging oxygen with carbon dioxide. Principles of gas exchange. So first, what is diffusion? Diffusion is the random movement of molecules. Individual molecules just move randomly. A substance can have direct movement or net diffusion. Net diffusion of a substance occurs because of the difference in the concentration or the gradient along the course. Within the animal's body, as oxygen is used and the carbon dioxide is produced, the concentration is used up the concentration gradient of the two gases provides the direction for their diffusion. So, example is as air or water nears the respiratory membrane, the oxygen concentration on the outside of the membrane is higher than then the internal side of the oxygen diffuses inward. The concentration gradient for carbon dioxide is in the opposite direction, and so net diffusion of carbon dioxide keeps it diffusing out of the body. The solubility of respiratory gases in water is low, and the solubility of oxygen is only 1/20 that of carbon dioxide. Respiratory pigments and include hemoglobin. So the color is red, and hemocyanin. Hemocyanin is color blue. So special transport molecules within the body fluids increase the oxygen content by holding oxygen molecules within the circulating fluids. Respiratory membranes, where oxygen concentrations are relatively high and easily release the oxygen in deeper tissues which are low in oxygen. So in the principles of gas exchange, large animals require an extended surface for gas exchange, while animals with small bodies exchange respiratory gases sufficiently through the body surface without specialized respiratory membranes. So animals that are small exchange respiratory gases or exchange gases sufficiently throughout their other parts of their body or near body surfaces because they have specialized respiratory membranes. Some vertebrates, such as small slender salamanders, exchange respiratory gases solely across the skin, which is richly supplied with blood vessels. Most fish or many aquatic invertebrates and some terrestrial invertebrates that specialized respiratory organs are gills. So some animals like fishes and some aquatic invertebrates and some terrestrial invertebrates have special organs like gills. In crustaceans, gills are often found where the legs attach to the body. Moving the legs sweeps water across the gill surface. In fish and some mollusks, gills are ventilated by muscular contractions that pump water across the respiratory surface. Terrestrial animals must protect their respiratory membranes from drying out. Many spiders have book lungs, which are specialized leaf-shaped inward folds of the cuticle surrounded by an air membrane that can be ventilated with muscular contractions. In larger terrestrial insects, the respiratory organs are inward, branching tubular extensions of the body wall called trachea. The system is so extensive that most cells are in the close proximity to the trachea branch, and all the tissues do not depend on the blood circulation for gas transportation. So terrestrial members really protect their respiratory membranes from drying up. So most spiders or many spiders have this thing called book lungs. In larger terrestrial insects, they breathe through their trachea. Now, let us proceed to the terrestrial vertebrates. So, terrestrial vertebrates generally have lungs. In the terms such as birds and mammals have high metabolic rate and correspondingly high respiratory surface area. Birds have one-way flow through their lungs, enabled by a complex system of air sacs. Mammals, reptiles, and amphibians have sac-like lungs with tidal airflow. This results in residual air remaining in the lungs, reducing the concentration of the available oxygen in their comparison lungs. Reptile lungs have fewer air sacs and less respiratory surface area than mammals, and amphibian lungs have less surface area than reptilian lungs. Now, let us proceed to the lesson 7.3. Circulation, the internal transport system. So, the objectives of these lessons are to differentiate between cardiovascular system and lymphatic system, to identify the components of blood, and to describe the functions of the mighty components of the circulatory system. So what is circulatory system? Circulatory system, also called the cardiovascular system or the vascular system. It is an organ system that permits blood to circulate and transport nutrients such as amino acids and electrolytes, oxygen, carbon dioxide, hormones, and blood cells to and from the cells in the body to provide nourishment and help in fighting diseases, stabilize temperature and pH level, and maintain homeostasis. So, the circulatory system has two separate systems. The first one is the cardiovascular system, and the second one is the lymphatic system. So, the task of the cardiovascular system is to distribute blood, while the task of the lymphatic system is the circulates the lymph. So first, what is blood? Blood is a fluid consisting of plasma, red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets that is circulated by the heart through the vertebrate vascular system, carrying oxygen and nutrients to and waste materials away from all the body tissues. Meanwhile, lymph is essentially recycled excess blood plasma after it has been filtered from the interstitial fluid between cells and returned to the lymphatic system. There are two types of circulatory system. The first one is open circulatory system, while the second one is closed circulatory system. Open circulatory system. Blood moves freely inside the body cavity and soaks the cells with nourishment. Meanwhile, in the second, closed circulatory system, blood is pumped through the tube, supplying cells with food, oxygen, and carrying away waste products. The human circulatory system consists of three parts. The first one is heart, while the second one is blood vessels, which is composed of the veins, arteries, and capillaries, while the third one is blood. Heart. The heart is a muscular organ slightly to the left or to the middle of the chest, a pumping device for the circulation of the blood. So the heart is found here. Blood vessels. Veins. The veins take blood back toward your heart. Arteries. Take oxygen-rich blood away from the heart. Capillaries are very tiny blood vessels that form a connection between arteries and the veins, facilitate the transfer of oxygen, nutrients, and the waste in and out of the body. So the veins take blood back toward your heart, while in the arteries, it takes oxygen-rich blood away from the heart. Capillaries are tiny blood vessels that form a connection between the arteries and the veins. So the last one is blood, a constantly circulating fluid providing the body with nutrition, oxygen, and waste removal. So most of you know what blood is. You know what blood is. So what we need to know is what its components and their functions. So A. Red blood cells. It takes the oxygen from the lungs and transports it to the rest of the body cells. White blood cells. Fights off germs and give protection from disease. Platelets. Help in blood clotting. Plasma. The main role of the plasma is to take nutrients, hormones to the parts of the body that needed it.
Let's proceed with the immune system. So what is immune system? So immune system is a complex network of organs containing cells that recognize foreign substances in the body to destroy them and destroy them. It protects vertebrates against pathogens or infectious agents such as viruses, bacteria, fungi, and other parasites. The human immune system is the most complex. This is the reason why immune system is a complex. there are major components of the immune system. So, number one with that is I didn't emphasize any definition in the PowerPoint, but please bear with me and let me discuss to you the components of immune system. So, number one is lymph nodes, small bean-shaped structure that produce and store cells that fight infection and disease and are part of the lymphatic system. The next one, the other component is the spleen, which is the largest lymphatic organ in the body, which is on the left side, under the ribs and above the stomachs, contains white blood cells that fight infection or disease. The other components of immune system is bone marrow. The yellow tissue in the center of the bones produces white blood cells. So, this spongy tissue inside some bones contains immature cells called stem cells, which could morph into any human cell. So, this spongy tissue inside some bones contains immature cells called stem cells, which could morph into any human cell. So, the last component is lymphocytes. These small white blood cells play a large role in defending the body against disease. The two types of lymphocytes are B cells, which make antibodies that attack bacteria and toxins, and T cells, the other one, which help destroy infected or cancerous cells. Oh, and I remember that there is another component, which is the other one is thymus, which is the small organ is where T cells mature. It maintains the production of antibodies that can result in muscle weakness. And the other one, the last one, is the leukocytes. This disease-fighting white blood cells identify and eliminate pathogens and protect the body from harmful microorganisms. So that is the function and the components of immune system. There are two basic types that combine to seek out and destroy disease-causing organisms or substances. The two basic types of leukocytes. The first one is the phagocytes, cells that chew up invading organisms, and the other one is lymphocytes, which allow the body to remember and recognize previous invaders and help the body destroy them. So that is the two basic type of leukocytes. So the next one is the important part of immune system is the three kinds of immunity. So the first one is the innate immunity or natural immunity, primitive system of defense against pathogens which are possessed by all animals. So innate immunity or natural immunity, that is a defense when a pathogen attacks or possess the immune system. Is innate immunity is the one who will defend the body against the pathogens. So there are two parts of innate immunity. The first one is humoral innate immunity, which involves substances found in humors or body fluids which interfere with the growth of pathogens. So the other type of innate immunity is cellular innate immunity, which carry out by cells called phagocytes that ingest and degrade pathogens by so-called natural killers. So cellular innate immunity is the one who destroys certain cancerous cells. One is passive immunity, which is a passive immunity is a borrowed from another source and it lasts for a short period of time. It lasts for a short period of time. For example, for that is antibodies in a mother's breast milk give a baby temporary immunity to diseases the mother has been exposed to. So this can help protect the baby against infection during the early years of childhood. So the importance of breast milk is to help protect the baby against infection during the early years of childhood because it cannot protect the body itself cannot protect the child from a bacteria that can be absorbed by the baby. So the last is adaptive immunity, which called active immunity, that develops throughout our lives. It involves the lymphocytes and develops as people are exposed to diseases or immunized against diseases through vaccination. So when you are being vaccinated, then that means that, like for example, the COVID, and it thorough kill the COVID itself, the virus, so that it can create some bacteria that will protect and may immune siya sa sakit, and gagawa siya ng mag-develop siya ng something that can be one of the reason to protect that vaccination. So it means that sinasanay ka niya. So immune response is the defensive reaction of the adaptive immune. So let me emphasize you now the on how immune system works. So when antigens, the foreign substances that invades the body, are detected, several types of cells work together to recognize them and respond. So that's what I mean in what I said earlier. So these cells trigger the B lymphocytes to produce antibodies, which are specialized proteins that lock onto specific antigens. And once produced, these antibodies stay in a person's body so that if his or her immune system encounters that antigen again, the antibodies are already there to do their job. So if someone gets sick with a certain disease like chickenpox, that person usually won't get sick from it again. So, gaya nga ng sinabi ko kanina na kaya tayo nagkakasakit kasi hindi familiar yung body natin. So, wala siyang pang shield kumbaga sa bacteria na pumasok. So, if you got healed by the bacteria na nag-invade and then nagamot yon, so automatically magfo-form na siya ng antigen sa body mo, magfo-form yung body mo ng antigen so that if papasok siya ulit is mayroon na silang preventions towards that virus, just like the chickenpox. That is why when you have a chickenpox na already and it won't affect you twice, it is very rare to a person to be affected again by chickenpox. So, yeah, that's it for this discussion, this topic, and I hope you understand my lesson, and I hope you understand the two lessons that is being discussed by me, and thank you for listening. Again, good day and assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. This is Fatma Zayam, and thank you for today. Bye. What is a homeostasis? Homeostasis is the property of a system which variables are regulated so that internal conditions remain stable and relatively constant. Example of homeostasis includes the regulations of temperatures and the balance between acidity and alkalinity. water level, presence of waste, salt, and other electrolytes, and metabolism. Human homeostasis is the process that maintains the stability of the human body's internal environment in response to changes in external conditions. So there are five internal components of homeostasis. So first one is concentration of oxygen and also the carbon dioxide. The next one is the alkalinity of the internal environment. The third one is concentration of salt and other electrolytes. The fourth one is concentration of salt and other electrolytes. The last is volume and pressure of extracellular fluid. So, what is the homeostasis in animals? So, the body contains billions, not only millions, of all different types of cells that work together for a common cause. They contain many organ systems, just like the digestive system, the respiratory system, the circulatory system, nervous system, skeletal system, and other organs organ system. And all those systems have to stay in balance with each other in the case of animals. Not just like in the humans. Even a small sudden change to the state inside of the body can be the cause of your death. So to prevent this, animals have developed something called homeostasis. So in short, the homeostasis uh, is being developed to prevent some changes that can be a cause of a animals to death. As simple as that. So let's talk about the energy balance in the human body. The bodies of animals are able to control the flow of energy using neurological and chemical signals. Not only can they control how much of the food they eat is stored as fat, but they can send signals to the brain which cause you to feel hungry or you feel you are full. So, so let's talk about temperature as an example of homeostasis, especially for warm blood animals. Just like our body, we humans are warm blooded. Whoa, so warm blooded animals need an almost constant body temperature. Heat is produced by the liver and muscle contraction and is a product of metabolizing food. The human body has lots of mechanisms to cool down and heat you up. When one feels unusually cold or hot, his internal body hasn't changed, so don't panic. Much at all, it is just that his body is panicking and trying to cool him off or heat him up. If he get too hot, bodily process will start working and he will die. So, the system is highly sensitive to any changes. Remember that. So, remember that when you feel cold or hot, it is not that your body temperature is didn't change. It is just your body is remain still, but your body is just panicking that you feel and trying to cool you off. So that's the reason why. So in a topic, we need to know. So this is the most important part: the importance of homeostasis of internal fluids in animals. Animals expend a significant amount of energy in maintaining homeostasis and conditions within the body. So, the homeostasis to prevent some sudden changes in animal organ inside the body, it develop homeostasis. So we need a lot of energy to that. So it includes the salt and water balance. So another one is animal tissues have a high water content. Insufficient water intake can cause dehydrations. So if the animals is lacking of water, it can cause dehydrations. Salts are essential for many biological functions. They are found in all body fluids. So it is not only in food preserves, but also the body needs salts in to all the fluids in the body. So salt and water balance are maintained in spite of disturbance during routine bodily process. So because of homeostasis, salt and water balance are maintained in spite of disturbances during routine balance bodily processes. So excretory system, as another one is excretory systems assist in the regulation of salt and water balance while removing toxic waste products. So excretory system regulates salt and water balance while removing some toxic waste product. So I think while removing waste products, the process of removing toxic waste product is not a bother at all because of the some homeostasis and the excretory systems assist homeostasis while that process called removing toxic waste products. So most aquatic invertebrates that live in salt water are osmoconformates, but osmoconformers, but most fish are or most aquatic invertebrates that lives in salt water are osmoconformers, but most fish are osmoregulators. Marine and freshwater fish face different problems in maintaining a salt water balance. So, there are different kinds of fishes. There are osmoregulators and osmoconformers. But they face different problems when it comes to maintaining a salt or water balance. So that is how hard maintaining the salt water balance in the fish also. So animals that live on land must find fresh water to drink and risk water loss by evaporation. So, animals that live on land must find fresh water to drink and risk water loss by evaporation. Salts are lost in the sweat of mammals. Salts are lost in the sweat of mammals, which is essential for cooling the body. So, in the mammals, to remove the salts, it dumadaan siya sa lumalabas siya through sweating, and it is essential for cooling the body. So it is the same with the human body. No, joke lang, just kidding. Salts are lost in the sweat of mammals, which is essential for cooling the body. You are curious about the unfamiliar word that is mentioned by me, which is the osmoregulation. So osmoregulation is the active regulation of the osmotic pressure of an organism's body fluids to maintain the homeostasis of the organism's water content. So that's it. It maintains the fluid balance and the concentration of electrolytes to keep the fluids from becoming too diluted or too concentrated. So, osmotic pressure is a measure of the tendency of water to move into one solution from another by osmosis. So, the higher the osmotic pressure of a solution, the more water tends to move into it. So pressure must be exerted on the hypertonic side of a selectively permeable membrane to prevent to prevent diffusion of water by osmosis from the side containing pure water. That's all for homeostasis. That's all for homeostasis. Let's proceed with the immune system.
Hello, my name is Mariam Elizabeth Piobalan, and I am going to be discussing the nervous system in 7.6 of our report today. So I do have right here my screen to help me with the flow of my report, so please bear with me. So starting on with nervous system. Nervous system is a part of our body. They coordinate our voluntary and our involuntary actions, and they also transmit signals to and from different parts of our body. So our nervous system is composed of two main parts. The first part is our central nervous system, or our CNS, and then the next is our peripheral nervous system, or PNS. So central nervous system, it's composed of our brain and our spinal cords. And on the other hand, the PNS, or the peripheral nervous system, those are the nerves that travel from the CNS to the rest of the animal's body. So PNS, we can say those are, for example, our spinal nerves or our neurons. Those are some examples of nerves that are from the PNS. This is how the nervous system works. So this is the process on how our nervous system works. So the nervous system receives the stimuli, sends message about the stimuli to different parts of the body, interprets what the stimuli means to the organism's existence, and coordinates the organism's response or reaction to the stimuli. So a situation with that, for example, there's a candle, and we lit the candle with a fire, and for example, this is the fire, and our fingers went near the fire. So what happens is our nervous system, our brain, receives the stimuli, and then they interpret what that means to our body, to an organism's body. And when they interpret that, they see, oh, it will burn us and it's pain. So they will then coordinate our body and our response to that stimuli. So when we touch the candle, we immediately take our finger away because we feel that it burns or it's painful. So next is the receptor. So the receptor, by definition, is the simplest system that allows a simple organism's body to coordinate its reaction to a stimuli. So a receptor, they actually are the ones that detect a change in an environment or in our body, in an organism's body, and then they send an electrical impulse as a response to that change. So our nervous system is composed of two main cells, which is the neurons and the glial cells. So our neurons, they are also called nerve cells, and our glial cells, they provide structural and metabolic support to our neurons. So first we have neurons. So neurons have special structures that allow them to send signals rapidly and precisely to other cells. In the form of electrochemical waves, these signals travel along thin fibers called axons. So axons, they are like a long cable. They travel from the main part of the cell to another cell. So They connect one neuron from another neuron. So they travel along axons, which cause chemicals called neurotransmitters to be released at junctions called synapses. So neurotransmitters, they are called chemical messengers. They are there to transmit messages from either from one neuron to another neuron or from a neuron to a muscle. And then synapses, they are a small pocket of space in between cells. So if these are two cells, the space between that is what we call a synapse. So they are a place that are used for messages to pass along so that they are able to communicate. So the connections between neurons can form neural circuits or also neural networks that generate our perception or an organism's perception of the world and our behavior. So next is glial cells. So glial cells, they are there to support neurons and hold them in place. They supply nutrients to neurons. They insulate neurons electrically. They destroy pathogens and remove dead neurons. And they also provide guidance cues directing the axons of neurons to their targets. So neurons, they don't conduct electrical impulses, and there are actually more glial cells in our brain than neurons. So types of glial cells are oligodendrocytes, astrocytes, ependymal cells, Schwann cells, microglia, and satellite cells. Now we are in the different parts of our brain. So the first part here we have our cerebral cortex. They analyze data, learn new information, they form thoughts, and they are responsible for an organism to make decisions. They are also they are the largest part of the brain, and they are the control and information processing center of the brain. Next is corpus callosum. They are responsible for the communication between the left and right hemisphere of our brain. Next, we have the frontal lobe. They are responsible for cognition and memory. They are responsible for us to have the ability to plan, organize, control our responses to receive a goal. Next is hypothalamus. They are responsible or they are control maintenance functions such as eating. They also help simulate our heart rate, an animal's heart rate, and blood pressure. Next is temporal lobe. So temporal lobe is for the auditory reception and interpretation. So the temporal lobe, they process, they recognize emotions, they recognize language, or they process any type of visual perception. The next part, we have the pituitary gland. They are responsible for master endocrine glands. So the pituitary gland, they control our metabolism, our growth, our reproduction, and an organism's sexual maturation. Next is pons. Pons controls arousal and regulates respiration. Next is medulla. They control our heartbeat and breathing. So pons actually work with medulla to help regulate our respiratory systems because that's what the medulla is for. So next we have the spinal cord. They control our simple reflexes like um, when we when we get hurt. Um, so they control that. Next is our parietal lobe. They are there for our body orientation. So they manage actually our senses. They manage our hearing, our touch, our sense of sight, sense of smell, and sense of taste. The next we have thalamus. So thalamus relays messages between lower brain centers and cerebral cortex. So thalamus, they actually regulate our sleep, our alertness, and our wakefulness. So the last is cerebellum. Cerebellum coordinates voluntary movement and balance, especially um, movements or balance that involved our hands and feet. So on the side here, we can see the picture of a brain labeled its different parts. We can see our medulla, our pons, hypothalamus, our temporal lobe, our cerebellum, cerebral cortex. We have our parietal lobe, our cerebral cortex, our frontal lobe, our brainstem. So that is the parts of the brain. And that is also the end of my discussion. I will be passing this to the next reporter, Arafat, who will be discussing the body in motion. Thank you.
Good day, everyone. So, our topic for today is body in motion. We will cover the functional relationship of the muscular and skeletal system in this topic. What is muscles? Muscle tissues are formed from specialized cells called muscle fibers that join together to constitute the muscular system. These tissues, nearly all movement in the body is a result of muscle contraction. Muscles could either be voluntary or involuntary. Involuntary muscles or non-striated are muscles that cannot be controlled by the conscious thought of the organism, while voluntary muscles or striated muscles can be. Examples of non-striated muscles are the heart and the smooth muscles. Hand and leg muscles are striated muscles. Moving on to the importance of muscles. Muscles provide strength, balance, posture, movement, and heat for the body to keep warm. The integrated action of joints, bones, and skeletal muscles produces obvious movements such as walking and running. Skeletal muscles also produce more subtle movements that result in various facial expressions, eye movements, and respiration. So there are also three types of muscles. First is the smooth muscle. It is found lining the walls of blood vessels, visceral organs such as digestive tract and uterus, and are also found attached to hairs in the integument. The second type of muscle is called cardiac muscle. It is found solely in the musculature of the heart wall. Cardiac muscle does not fatigue readily, which is a desirable trait in the muscles that maintain circulation of blood. In the last type of muscle is called skeletal muscle. Skeletal muscle are closely associated with the skeleton and are used in. Fibers are closely associated with the connective tissues and are under voluntary control by the nervous system. There are approximately 639 skeletal muscles in the human body. So our next stop is the skeletal system. What is skeletal system? Skeletal system is the system of bones associated with cartilages and joints of a human body. Together with these structures form the human skeleton. Skeleton can be defined as the hard framework of human body around which the entire body is built. Almost all the hard parts of a human body are components of human skeletal system. Joints are very important because they make the hard and rigid skeleton allow different types of movements at different locations. Functions of human skeleton. Human skeleton performs some important functions that are necessary for survival of human beings. And one of its function is it gives strength, support, and shape to the body. Without a hard and rigid skeletal system, human body cannot stand upright and it will become just a bag of soft tissues without any proper shape. Another function of human skeleton is in areas like the rib cage and skull. The skeleton protects inner soft vital organs like heart and brain from external shocks. Any damage to these organs can prove fatal. Therefore, protective function of skeletal is very important. One of the functions of human skeleton is the leverage for movements. Bones of the human skeleton in all parts of body provide attachments to the muscles. These muscles provide motor power for producing movements of body parts. In these movements, the parts of skeleton act like levers of different types, thus producing movements according to the needs of the human body. And the last function of human skeleton is the production of red blood cells. Bone-like sternum and heads of tibia have hemopoietic activity. These are the sites of production of new blood cells. There are two main parts of skeleton. First is the eggshell skeleton. It includes the skull, the spine, and the ribs and sternum. It has 80 bones. And below, these are the parts of the eggshell skeleton. First is the skull. It includes the bones of cranium, face, and ears. The second one is hyoid. It is a U-shaped bone or complex of bone located in the neck between the chin and larynx. The third one is vertebral column. It includes spinal vertebrae. The last one is the thoracic cage. It includes the ribs and sternum. The another main part of skeleton is called appendicular skeleton. It includes the bones of the limbs, the shoulder girdle, and pelvic girdle. It has 126 bones. Below are the parts of appendicular skeleton. First is the pectoral girdle. The second one is upper limbs, includes the bones of the arms and hands. The third one is pelvic girdle, includes hip bones, and the last one is lower limbs, includes bones of the legs and feet. The skeleton is composed of fibrous and mineralized connective tissues that gives firmness and flexibility. It consists of the following. The first component is the bone, a type of mineralized connective tissue that contains collagen and calcium phosphate, a mineral crystal. Calcium phosphate gives bone its firmness. Bone tissue may be compact or spongy. Bone provides support and protection for body organs. The second component is the cartilage, a form of fibrous connective tissue that is composed of closely packed collagenous fibers in a rubbery gelatinous substance called chondrine. Cartilage provide flexible support for certain structures in adult humans, including the nose, trachea, and ears. The third component is the tendon, a fibrous band of connective tissue that is bonded to bone and connects bone to bone. The fourth one is ligament, a fibrous band of connective tissue that joins bones and other connective tissues together at joints. The last one is the joint, a site where two or more bones or other skeletal components are joined together. Moving on to animal locomotion and its importance. Locomotion is any variety of movements or methods that animal uses to move from one place to another. Some modes of locomotion are self-propelled. Example is running, swimming, and flying. There are also many animal species that depend on their environment for transportation, a type of mobility called passive locomotion. Example of is rolling of some beetles. Animals move to find food, a mate, a suitable habitat, to escape predators, and for survival. Animals move through four types of environment. First environment is the aquatic, in or on water. The second one is terrestrial, on ground or other surface. The third one is fossorial, or in the underground, and aerial, or in the air.